Hello, everyone. What is up? It is Friday afternoon over here in Southern California. It's Friday evening on the East Coast of the United States. It's late Friday over there in Europe. It might even be Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. But no matter what time it is, you know what time it is. It's time for Cinema Crusaders, that show where we take a look back at movies that are at least 10 years old, although we do give passes to movies every now and then. And we want to revisit them, take a look at them again with a critical modern eye and see if and reintroduce them to modern audiences and give our takes on them. So before we do that, before I introduce the movie that we're going to get into, I need to introduce the gentleman who helped me make this podcast something that you all enjoy to watch. I'm talking about none other than my fellow Cinema Crusaders. So first off, I'm going to introduce you, a man who is an educator, a writer, and all-around great gentleman. And most importantly, he is the owner of a Beagle. We have to mention that. I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers.
I'm doing good on this one. I will say this movie, I'm really torn on it on a lot of levels. It's like it tries to be some really interesting things, and I'm starting to think that part of the problem is it's trying to be too many things. It's trying to be this psychodrama about dissociative identity disorder. It's trying to be a mystery where you're trying to figure out who the killer is, and it's trying to be a horror movie where the true killer of the movie is the supernatural force of nature. And it's like, I think it reached a little bit too high and it couldn't quite land right. But I think we'll get into that before too long.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot to say about this movie. And this is another one of those movies where it's got a huge cast, a star-studded cast, I dare say. And so, we got to pick and choose our battles here because we try and keep this to an hour and 15 minutes, so it's easy for you to watch. So we got a lot to cover here. But next, I need to introduce a triple threat. He's a writer. He is a director, an artist. Look at that. He is a director. He's done directing too. He's done his own movies, and he is just an unbelievably sexy individual. I'm talking about none other than Jeff. Roll those R's. Bracy.
And Blue Steel.
All right. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this. Steve's covered it. It's an interesting film. It's just chock full of some of my very favorite actors out there. It's well shot. It's interesting. It's very interesting. But unfortunately, as Steve pointed out, it doesn't quite pull everything together the way it wanted to.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this last week too with what was it?
In the Line
2
of
weeks
Fire.
ago. Yeah, Within the Line of Fire. It's one of those movies where I can enjoy watching it, and I like this movie, and I've watched it multiple times. But when I start to think about it, there's definite holes. There's definite problems, and that's there's two ways to watch movies, and I think both are important, and we're gonna get into that. So, but before I do that, I need to introduce the last member of our Cinema Crusaders team. Last but not least, he is a writer. He is a director. He is so many different things, and the owner of a beautiful head of hair. The man behind Warehouse 9 Pro, none other than Lance Lucero. How you doing, Lance?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, if my hair had multiple personalities, I do think that the first conflict there would probably be Fabio's hair, which is kind of substandard at this point.
I have got a question for you. If your hair turned evil, who would come out on top? Lance Lucero's hair, evil hair, or Legros? Which one? So,
I would say mine. My hair would be more evil than whatever wig he had to fight, because it is a wig. This is the real deal.
Yeah, nice. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Legros, this is his arch nemesis. They take him out. So be scared.
Absolutely,
be scared, everyone.
Yeah. So
that
interesting
is
film.
Very valid point. He was dealing with wigs.
That's right. That's hair that's displaced. Interesting film, and I'm glad you brought it up. This one just totally was never on my radar. I didn't even know it existed, but it was fun to sit through, and it is one of those movies where it had tons of potential and fell off the rails. And I often wonder, should you really do that I mean, there are a lot of sophisticated audiences out there, but should you do that? Should you actually kind of manipulate that much just to try to create some kind of twists at every turn, which I don't think you need to do. I think there was enough vibe to it that it could have been scaled back and actually probably succeeded better. But when we're dealing with the infinite mind, you go down roads that have many potholes in it. It's like I mentioned, like when we were off screen, it's like time travel movies. You got to be careful because you're going to put up with a lot of holes. You can't patch those holes fast enough when you make them in the story. So it's going to be interesting to cover this because there are some great elements, and then there are those few that just suck you right out. It just sucks you right out.
Plus, I think this is a movie searching for a genre. It's not really a horror movie. It's kind of a suspense movie, but there isn't a ton of suspense. It's more, I don't know what it is. It's hard to classify. That's not necessarily always a bad thing, but
yeah, as we said, that can be okay with films, but in this case, it didn't work out.
What's up? Got a couple comments here. Malcolm Rivers said, "I've got to go find myself as a return before I get back. Keep me here." Yeah. Some of that, I think that they kind of wasted the actor who played the actual Malcolm Rivers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then also another film inspired by Agatha Christie. Yeah, we're going to get into that as well. So before we get into the movie, I do have to give a quick shout out, and I'm going to let, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but we have to mention that we are filming today. What is this? February 2nd of 2024. And Carl Weathers passed today. So rest in peace to Carl Weathers, famous for portraying Apollo Creed. He also did what I think is a criminally underrated action movie in Action Jackson. More recently, he was Griff in The Mandalorian. So I'm going to go around the horn real quick. Just, I don't want to spend a ton of time, but if you want to say a few words, and then we'll get going. So Steve, Carl Weathers.
Yeah, what a loss. I really did not think he was going to die this year at all. He seemed like he was doing strong, up to this point. He was active on social media. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with him as far as I could tell. And then he just suddenly goes like this. It's sad to see. And I will also add, in addition to the other things that we've discussed that he's been in, he was also Dylan in Predator. You can't take that away from him. That's another great performance and another classic movie. He's just been in so many things, and it's just going. It's a loss. It's a real loss. He was one of the great action characters in action movies. that you would see everywhere.
Yeah, and he had a lot of parts in TV as well. He was in Good Times, believe it or not. So
in The Heat of the Night.
Yep.
The TV series.
Remember Fortune Dane? Didn't last. Yeah. That detective show.
Yeah. Over to you, Jeff, on Carl Weathers. So,
yeah, he's a guy who I always felt like should have gotten more out of his career. He's so charismatic, so physical, such a good dramatic actor on top of it. And like yourself, I'm a huge fan of the film Action Jackson, and it's not just an underrated film. It's just a shame and a half that never spawned Carl Weathers as an action franchise, much less an action hero career, because check that movie out. That movie is terrific. It is so much fun.
Definitely. And finally, Lance on Carl Weathers.
So. Iconic. I mean, still a performer that had much to offer, and usually people can be put out to pasture at some moment, but he's one of those performers that, no, he could have just kept going. And it's sad to see it cut short. A fruitful career. And yeah, I'll throw my hat in the corner for Action Jackson. I think I rewatched it maybe about 6 months ago. It's just great fun.
Yeah.
Not pretentious, just great, silly fun.
It is in my home movie collection.
Rightly so, because it's fun. He's iconic. Always a guy that always wanted to inspire me to keep in shape. I mean, fantastic. So, R.I.P. and he's a legend.
I will also say, at least when he was younger, he was evidently a very good nice person to be around. My parents, he's the same age as my parents, which makes you think. They actually went to school with him and knew him when he was at San Diego State. And even though he was a football star and headed to the NFL at that point, I guess he was a very nice guy. So, I think we lost in that aspect too. Just
absolutely.
Congratulations on being promoted if you believe in, going to heaven and everything. But rest in peace, Carl. So,
yep.
So with that, let's go ahead and get into this movie. So, basic plot for everybody out there. The movie starts off, and there is a little children's rhyme that goes on. I forget what it is. It's something that's like, I met a man upon the stairs, or that wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. And you're not sure what that means. And it's kind of one of those things that it kind of fits in the movie. I don't know. It does and it doesn't. I think it's more about that he's changing personalities and things like that. Who is this convict? The whole movie is revolving around a convict named Malcolm Rivers. You're not sure who Malcolm Rivers is for a long part of the movie, but 10 people get trapped in an isolated hotel, and a convict is introduced at that point. And I think at first the movie is trying to play off that the character played by
Jake Busey
is Malcolm Rivers. But there are a series of deaths that happen, and we come to find out that this whole scenario at the hotel is taking place in the mind of an actual killer, and it's his alternate identities who are eliminating each other one by one. And his psychologist, played by, blanking on Alfred Molina. Thank you very much. I'm blanking on names today. Is arguing for his life in a last-minute court hearing before he's supposed to be executed, and they're arguing that he shouldn't be killed because they're trying to eliminate the personalities, reconsolidate him, and get rid of the killer personality. There are a lot of holes in that. We're going to get into that. But at its most basic, that is the plot of the movie. So, but the suspense of the movie is in, at first, you don't know what's going on. You think that this is a genuine scene at the hotel and people are getting killed. And then once they come back and we find out what is actually happening, I think the movie loses a little bit of its steam at that point, but it's interesting because we're not sure who is going to emerge as the dominant personality, or so we think. So I think that's a fair summary of the movie. You guys agree with that? So
yeah.
As far as the complications, yes. I mean,
okay.
It's a struggle, but that's, I think, a fair assessment.
Okay. So before we there is a lot to break down there, and we have really focused character heavy up to this point. Not that we want to give short shrift to the amazing cast in this movie, which includes, and let me just read off the names for you real quick. We have got John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, John Hawkes, Alfred Molina, Clea Duvall, John McGinley, William Lee Scott, Jake Busey, Pruitt Taylor Vince, Rebecca De Mornay. So, and those are just the main characters, and there's a bunch of great supporting actors and actresses as well. So this is a cast, one of those things is without peer. And we've covered quite a few of these movies lately where there are so many great actors and actresses in it. It's incredible. I don't want to give short shrift to them, but we want to focus on story. So I'm going to go around the horn here, and I want you to pick one actor or actress and their character to just, give a little spiel about. And then we're going to move on to story and direction and production value and things. So with that, I'm going to start with Steve.
Okay, I guess we should start with John Cusack, since he's the character we're meant to empathize with for most of the film. Okay. And the thing was with Cusack is he's playing it very close to the vest in many ways. You don't necessarily know where he's coming from, because he starts off, when we first sees him, he basically kills this, or seemingly kills, this woman who was standing by in the middle of the road. And the way that this movie plays with time, it kind of goes back and sees how he gets with that. But in the end, you find that, Cusack in many ways, Ed, the character that he plays, ends up being a lot more sympathetic, because, he takes responsibility for making the hit on there. He does everything possible, to try to help this woman, even putting himself at risk by going out in the storm and going out in the car in the middle of the night to try to get help for her, and things like this. So you end up liking him, because of these actions. Like, you can definitely tell, like, he's somebody who's taking responsibility for his decisions. And but then you start finding out little bits more about him, and you start seeing that he has blackouts at times, and all these other issues. And the way that this movie kind of plays, it starts to make you wonder, whether any of these characters could in fact be Malcolm Rivers. And at that was kind of like the point where I'm starting to think, okay, is he Rivers? And then we find out, well, yeah, but not the way you necessarily thought about it.
Yeah.
And I like, okay, I kind of dig that. So, Cusack's character it ends up being one of the more likable characters, and you can definitely tell they're focusing on him as like the character the audience is meant to attach to. And he works pretty well.
Now, I will say this movie gives you a lot of clues that there's something wrong, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And one of those clues, you were talking about how it jumps back and forth in time, is the series of events that are so random and yet end up giving all these people to be in the same hotel at the same time, to include a spiked high heel falling out the back of a car and then popping a tire. It's like the chances of that happening are so minuscule that it seems like a red flag or a warning flag to the audience. But I didn't pick up on it at first. And usually I pick up on that stuff. Maybe you guys did. Maybe I'm just slow. So, that's entirely possible. So over to you, Jeff, for a character. Or did you have something to say, Steve?
I was just going to say, at first it's sort of like, yeah, some of these things sound a bit implausible. But then the implausibilities start, adding up. And after a while, it's like, yeah, this has got to be some kind of dreamscape or something. And so a lot of it is the dominoes kind of falling until you start making the connections.
Or something supernatural. Yeah.
I do like, though, an agreement about how Cusack plays it. He doesn't overdo it at all. Even when he's discovering horrific things, there can be actor tropes as the traditional recoil and gasp. And I liked how he methodically played the character kind of like a detective. And I thought that was actually really cool in the performance. He has his problems, but he is really level-headed about trying to get to the bottom of the case. So I like how he performed this particular character. I think it was really cool.
I agree. I mean, I like Cusack in quite a few things. And you see it in the parts he plays in suspenseful or scary movies. I mean, 1408, he's great in that movie. I think he's great in Grosse Point Blank, being an understated and dark humor, the understated dark humor of that movie, but the way he plays it doesn't make it trite, so.
Right.
Yeah. Jeff, a character from this movie and an actor or actress.
I'm going to go with John C. McGinley. I'm going to leave.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Because I think that's who Lance might hit on.
And real quick, I got a note for everybody out there. John C. McGinley is who brought us to this movie, and he brought us here from his comedic performance in Office Space. So,
yep.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going with him because this is very against type to what he's typically known for playing. He's known for playing these big, braggadocious, hard asses, antagonistic sort of characters. And here he does a wonderful job of playing somebody who is damn near autistic, but highly functioning so. And I like his performance because once you understand what's going on in the film, I start kind of going back and going like, okay, what aspect of the overall character's personality does he represent? And I'm looking at it from some of my psychological training, and I'm seeing how he's very Rain Man. He's got order and structure. He has all these things he does to survive. When you understand his background, you see like he's had to create this like order palace inside of his mind. So he counts things. He has exact procedures. He speaks them out. Again, it's very OCD, very high functioning autistic. And I find this particular character very interesting in that way, seeing how he keeps handling more and more trauma. What does he do to pacify himself and not just for himself, but he's got a child to look after. So he cannot afford to go to pieces, and he, for the most of the movie, he stays relatively calm and cool, going through his little rituals, naming off facts, and he's so small compared to everybody else in the film. It's a really wonderful performance, and that sort of thing is not easy to pull off.
No.
Actors, by the very nature of the craft, you are oftentimes meant to be pull something out of yourself, and he's trying to reduce himself here. And I'd like to know if he studied any sort of people in particular, if he did go to people with OCD or talk to people who are somewhat autistic and see what they were doing, because I see all these behaviors. I'm like, wow, he's really nailing it. And I just like the way he functions, handling situations for himself and for those he cares about as well. He's so regimented. But we see that he's also quite human. He's capable of extreme emotion, although he gets it in check very quickly. But he's also capable of sudden impulsive action when it's required.
Yeah, I think McGinley does it as an incredible performance, even though it's a supporting role. But I agree with you. This is not what you usually see him doing, and it's pretty amazing. What about you, Lance? What did you think of that?
It's great to know. Like, I know I've known for a long time he's a good actor, but it's always fun to see an actor able to step outside of what people think of as their wheelhouse and really show you what they can do.
Yeah,
I definitely think that for a minute I thought this could have the potential of being annoying, and it wasn't, because he played it well. He played it with a definite small arc, but it was there.
Yeah.
And I think he performed it extremely well this whole cast, it's eye candy. Everybody's got something to bring to the table. And he was able to, I think, stretch with a lot of emotion and these character elements. So of everyone, I think he had a heavy task, because he just didn't play it heavy, straight. He had to have a little bit of an arc. And I think it worked perfectly. So yeah, he's a standout in this flick. I was really pleased by it.
yeah, and I will say that we don't get to know a lot about this character's past, but or his wife, who is hardly in it at all, except for being run over by a car. And I think she's got maybe 10 lines in the whole movie, something like that. But he's a genuinely good person who dies trying to saving the child, which is ironic, because, well, we'll get into that in story in a minute. So with that, let me go to Lance for a character. And an actor.
Well, I'm going to go with Rebecca De Mornay, because she's awesome, and I thought she was totally wasted. I just thought she had
in every sense of the word.
Yeah, she had so much potential, and she was so brief that it was like, no, there's more there to this character that I want to see. Because she was cut short, made me think, well, there's a loss there, because she could have kept going, and I think she could have added a lot more to this story. So I think she was wasted. She could have done so much more, and I felt that was a big bummer, because I wanted to see more of her. Because she's got charisma, she's just a presence, and it's like, is that it? That's all we get? What is she, in a teenage slasher movie?
Yeah, because you've got this ensemble, this large ensemble of characters, and you get these hints of things, like you said, like, oh, I'd like to know more about this guy or know more about this gal, but there's not enough time to develop the characters.
Well,
right.
I will also say this. I'm going to go to Steve. I want to get his comment on this. But I think that of all of the characters, hers is the one that really comes off as flat and stereotypical. It's the vapid Hollywood actress. There's nothing else to her. Everybody else has got some layers, but not her. What do you think about that, Steve?
It's almost like you could have probably could have saved a bundle by getting any other actress on the planet to do that part.
Yeah.
You didn't, and it's almost as though they did eliminate the character fast, but the point is it could have been written better. There could have been more for her to do than be so flat. So I've seen a massive potential wasted.
What about you, Steve? Yeah.
I think that you're both between the two of you. I think you've got it. I think a lot of it is the role is not written well. She doesn't have a lot to do really. She's there to sort of set up all the characters being killed and all the murders, you know. But
Really?
Rebecca De Mornay does a lot in the screen time that she has, and you know, it's between her charisma and the way that she plays it. You know, she's clearly having fun playing this character. You know, she's doing a very Sunset Boulevard type of thing. You know, she is this aging starlet who is trying to be relevant, and she is probably the least relevant character in the entire group, which I find really, really interesting. And you know, but the performance is really good, and so yeah, you could see the potential in the character, and clearly De Mornay did, which is probably why she liked playing her. But unfortunately, it's just the writing doesn't bring that out, and this is going to be a familiar refrain with this episode, I think.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, a little inside baseball here. She's in none of the marketing material. I don't believe that she promoted the movie at all, and I get the feeling that she was in this movie as a favor to somebody. You know, so
that a lot.
Yeah, that's just the feeling I get. I could be wrong. That is, I've never read anything to that point, but she's in none of the movie posters. You don't see her face pop up anywhere. I mean, and this is 2001, I believe, 2003. She's a huge star at this point.
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
So,
I mean, there's the age old adage that there's worse ways to get paid. She got to show up and not have to get soaking wet like everybody else did for the duration of the shoot. You know what I mean? So there are worse ways to get paid in life. But still, this is, you know, this goes on your resume. This lasts forever.
Yeah.
At least this film was 2003.
Yeah. So it is very interesting. Her character and what she did for this movie. Now I'm going to pick. God, there are a lot of people to pick. I was going to pick Alfred Molina, but I think I got to go somewhere else, and I'm going to go to Pruitt Taylor Vince, who played Malcolm Rivers.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going with him is that he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the screen time he has, the physical acting that he does in this movie is truly disturbing, and I think it makes the Malcolm River character interesting. Without going over the top. And one of the things that stands out is every time you get a close-up of him talking, Pruitt Taylor Vince has his eyes moving back and forth constantly. It's unnerving and disturbing. And I don't understand how you could do that for take after take.
It's actually a real neurological disorder he has.
Does he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that because I was like, I'm really believing he's got a neurological disorder. Well, I guess he does. So,
and if you remember, he was at the beginning of Barfly. So one thing I want to cover briefly is how we've spidered out now in movies to where we've covered movies that have these actors in there that we didn't realize. He's at the beginning of Barfly, very, very young, 1986.
Wow.
And his eyes are doing the same exact thing.
Okay.
Tobin Bell's in the first scene with Clint Eastwood.
But I will say, though, they focused on his eyes, and that was a smart directorial decision because I'm immediately going, this is a guy with a neurological disorder, you know, and I'm like, what is going on with this guy? But then there are layers to it. So at different points, they flash back and forth between the face of Ed, who is played by John Cusack, and then Pruitt Taylor Vince, who actually has this character inside his head. And the level of acting and mannerisms and the way he holds his head while he's talking and the confused look on his face, it is so dead on and professional. And the same thing happens at the end where he is in a state of peace when he is, I can't remember Amanda Pete's character name off the top of my head, but he's her. And then he turns into Timothy, and the hatred and the evil and the whores don't get second chances right before he kills Alfred Molina. It's truly disturbing. It's just an amazing villain performance, and I wanted more, and we didn't have time for it. You know, right? What do you guys think about his real quick before we move on into story?
I was hoping somebody would mention him. I thought maybe Lance would, because like he's been a long time favorite of mine. He's another actor who hasn't had as big a career as I would have liked. But I think the very first thing I saw him in was the X-Files, and he was just creepy as sin, and he had a great turn on The Mentalist. And everything I see him in, he's always so damn interesting.
Yeah. I will say
He's
the first thing
just
I saw
pathetic.
him in, the first thing I saw him in, and I don't remember his eyes doing it in this movie, so maybe I just didn't notice, but it's not a great movie, but he plays a doomed priest in the American Constantine movie. So Keanu Reeves. So
Yeah,
and
I mean,
I've forgotten about that part.
yeah.
I still prefer Matt Ryan, but yeah.
I think it's the Rebecca De Mornay effect. He was just sold short, because he didn't play it off. He could have easily played it off like everybody did in that era of like Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lamb. You know what I mean? He was strapped to the chair, all this stuff, but he didn't play it like that, which was refreshing to see. He took a different avenue, but once again, a little too less of him was detrimental to the story, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I will say that
I was going to say, like, he's playing all these different characters, and he's acting like the actors that he's acting as. You know, he definitely pulls a little bit of Cusack. You can definitely see a little bit of the Amanda Peet character. You know, you can definitely see a little bit of the kid, and and that takes a lot of work. I mean, being convincingly another actor, that takes a lot of skill.
And I will say the kid Timothy, he only had one line in the movie, the kid who played Timothy, but his ability to pull off expressions were pretty impressive for a young child. So I thought he was pretty good. But there's a lot of those actor performances in here. Alfred Molina, I think, is really good in this movie. Jake Busey is really good in this movie. Ray Liotta is in this movie and is Ray Liotta, but it's still good.
He's Ray Liotta.
Yeah, but I mean, Ray Liotta is exactly what you needed. I mean, how many corrupt cops has he played?
Right,
Yeah.
Not exactly a stretch. I think the disorder is called nystagmus, a condition which causes a person's eyes to move involuntarily.
Huh. All right. Well, I thought that the directing choice, or to have a close up on that at different points, was smart. So I think it was a smart choice. So with that, let's get into what we really want to talk about here, and that is story. So let's go around the horn here. I'm going to go with Jeff. We need to talk about what went right and what went wrong, what could have been better but was okay, and then let's talk. I want us to talk a little bit about the actual filming of the movie, the shots and stuff, because there's a lot going on here. So let's start first with, real quick around the horn, what went right. So what do you think went right for you, Jeff?
Well, right off the bat, the movie had my attention. It starts off with this dialogue, so somebody's interviewing a killer. So, okay, let's get into this. What's going on? And then we cut into what you imagine is going to be somehow the backstory of this killer, or whatever the movie is leading up to. But it's like you said, along the way, you realize something's off from the get-go. We have these series of coincidences. A woman loses a steel-spiked high heel, which punctures a tire. And there are subtle things that just aren't adding up. And so there's this disconnect in your head, and it still becomes interesting. And then later on in the movie, where it starts to deviate for me is like you're trying to reconcile, okay, we've got this court case thing going on, but we've got this flashback sequence going on. And I'm enjoying the flashback sequence quite a bit, but I'm having trouble sort of reconciling what's going on with the other side of things. Because if we just had the flashback sequence itself as a movie, I think that would have been very satisfying for me. I was enjoying that. It was a supernatural slasher, and I was trying to figure out, like, oh man, have they gone on one of Stephen King's off roads? Now they're on the hotel they can't escape from. Are they all really dead and in hell? There are all these kind of creepy coincidental things happen, and of course, like, people start dying, and I was really into that part of the film. And as Lance said, it's incredibly well shot. The setting is fantastic. The lighting is fantastic. The amount of rain, like Lance has said, the amount of rain that they put in there, and man, that is potentially the most rain I've seen used on any set that wasn't set out to sea. They really committed to a downpour that showed that they're in the middle of basically like a tsunami style kind of flood, or not tsunami, but a typhoon style flood going on, that you can believe that the roads have been completely washed out. And it's just a miserable situation. And I think we can all relate to the fact that, like, we've been caught in bad weather. It's like, okay, we've got to pull over and find a place. And it was a great tool, because when you do a horror movie, one of the things you generally have to do is you have to isolate characters to keep them from going for help. And I thought it was kind of clever the way these almost like a Final Destination sort of coincidences kept happening to make sure that they would be completely isolated, and then they're isolated by the force of nature itself. So you do get one of those sort of vibes like the 1408, like no matter what you do, you can't get out. And I think it was Steve, one of you said like this felt like it would have been a really great Twilight Zone episode backstage.
Yeah, that was me, and
I was into it.
In fact, it reminded me of an actual Twilight Zone episode where you come to find out that all the characters are actually little dolls in a Christmas donation bucket.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it's an interesting.
The store forgot that she was a mannequin.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought exercise. Unfortunately, well, we're going to get into that in a minute when we talk about what went wrong. I want to talk about what went right first. So, Lance, what do you think went right in the film? So,
well, I think what went right is the casting, flat out, and then the environment, the setting, the vibe. It was the creep factor was perfect without working too hard at being a creep factor. Not leading into shots that are cliche with certain lights and camera angles, music that doesn't swell when something happens. You know what I mean? I think it unraveled the best way they thought it would, but the vibe in itself, I mean, beautifully shot. The whole set, the whole environment, all that water. Yes, you can buy that they are trapped, and I like that vibe. The whole look of the rundown hotel was fantastic, and the film stocks they used. I mean, we're talking about early 2000s, late 90s. The New Vision film stocks were coming out. I mean, they were faster, they were sharper, they just looked amazing. And the tungsten balanced film, the 500T they used, looked just amazing. But they also mixed it with Fuji, the Fuji daylight film, which is an interesting choice, but that adds its own different look with the greens and the blues. Does it make it more dreamy? I don't know. Does it make it a little bit more ethereal? Who knows? It's an aesthetic choice. But to me, I really liked the way this movie looked. I was like, wow, this kept me going. And it wasn't overdone. Like even the blood wasn't overstated. You know what I mean? Nothing was truly overstated. But one thing that did ring out in the back of my mind was it was so well shot. And I kept thinking, about Psycho and stuff. This movie would look really good in black and white. I'm not saying take it and turn it into black and white. You cannot do that. But if it was photographed in black and white, like it was a memory, and it had that little extra grain structure, I think that would have totally changed the dynamic of the film.
Oh wow, yeah.
But it wouldn't have sold. It wouldn't have sold back then. But
that is such an amazing idea. Wow.
What if they'd what was the Kenneth Branagh film? What if they shot it like Dead Again?
Yeah.
Because they shot the memory stuff, the flashback stuff in black and white. That would have been great.
Yes, the flashbacks in black and white. So even if it was mixed media in this, not mixed media, but mixed film stocks, like if all the hotel stuff was in black and white, I would have bought it because it was so well photographed. And I think that in itself adds a little bit more impending doom, and you focus on the characters more in black and white. I think that when you do get too much eye candy, you get a little distracted, like, ooh, that's really green. Ooh, look at the sky. Look at the flowers. So I think aesthetically they made an awesome choice, but I couldn't help but think, wow, if it fell into my hands, what would I have done photographically? And I would have did black and white because I think it was shot that well. So that's what really kept me going. in the actual film. Story wise, you know, when we fall off, it's like, all right, I can see what's happening, but I'm still hooked because of what's in front of my face, and I kept going.
That's interesting. I love that observation about the black and white. I never thought about it, but it would work. And it would have given you a tie back to almost like a Psycho vibe too. So
that's what was striking me, the Psycho vibe. And, you know, I was like, wow, this would look really great in black and white.
Yeah. Steve, what went right for you in this movie?
I think you've gotten into a lot of it. I think a lot of it is the visuals. James Mangold is a very good visual director. That definitely shows. You know, the thing is, he tends to be a little inconsistent in that, you know, one day you'll get a Logan and another day you might get Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Don't even.
This movie's kind of, you know, you see the strengths and the weaknesses, but where you see the strengths, they're really, really good. He's definitely going very much to classic horror movies for his influences here. There is definitely a Bates Motel vibe with the whole place. That's probably intentional, and I think that works. And it makes you kind of wonder, you know, in many ways, a lot of those horror influences kind of makes you wonder, you know, was it maybe Hawkins's character, you know, who was basically being Norman Bates and he's stalking everybody. You know, it's not, but the visual efforts with it do lead you in that direction, which is nice. You get some very Shining-esque moments with the woman in the bathroom with the locked door, and you're starting to wonder, is Jack Torrance going to come through with an axe? You know, those kinds of things are very, very well done. You know, you even with Rebecca De Mornay's death, you get something that is very Psycho-like, with the fact that she's killed very tastefully. She's not killed in a gruesome, bloody way like you would see in a lot of modern horror movies.
It's not a slasher. It's not a slasher. So
it is not a slasher, you know, and you know, she's, you know, you see the blood going forward and fading to black and all of that. You know, very artfully done. So a lot of those elements really kind of makes it work. I like the element of the dissociative identity disorder. I think there's a lot that you can do with that. A lot of really good concepts, you know, that are kind of floating around. It's just that, you know, the execution of it is what's not landing. But I think conceptually what they're trying to do with it is very, very interesting and you know, really could have made for a great movie. And as it is, it's entertaining enough that I don't regret having seen it.
Interesting.
And the tail on that, I do. Yeah, the psycho vibes are evident. You know, the Friday the 13th vibes are evident. You know, there is these little things that I'm like, is this homageous? It's only 2003. We're talking, you know, not very long after the fact, you know, 20 years. But you can see we're going back, though, 21 years ago. So I can see those influences being used that were still relatively fresh 21 years ago.
Now, I will say real quick for me what went right. You guys covered quite a bit of what I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to go back to James Mangold again. He's a guy I've got a lot of time for until he did Dial of Destiny, and we're not even going to get into that. But the guy is a directorial chameleon. He could do any genre and somehow is able to capture the essence of what it is. I mean, he's done Western with 3:10 to Yuma. He's done romance movies with Kate and Leopold, you know, a rom-com movie, which was good. He's done Copland, Girl Interrupted, just all these different. He did Logan, which I think is a great movie. In this one, I like to think of myself as some kind of horror director, and I like horror movies. I talk about them on another podcast. I don't think it's a small thing, and I don't think we can overlook that without ever directing a horror movie before, he knows his shot selection for horror movies. He knows how to integrate music to build suspense in a horror situation. He knows where to put the focus in on the camera in different shots. He knows what to show and what not to show, depending on what kind of horror movie you're going for. I think if this movie had been a slasher movie, you wouldn't have gotten any of the suspense or psychological thriller. It would have just been a gore fest, you know? Yeah. So I'm curious real quick what you guys think of that, if you have any comments on that. But I think that is a huge thing that I took away from this, is that James Mangold is one of those directors who seems to be able to do any genre. And I don't know if it's because he studies them or he's just that damn talented, but it's pretty impressive to me. What do you guys think about that real quick before we go to the next category?
I definitely think, based on his catalog, he's more miss than hit for me.
Yeah.
Definitely more miss. I think he gets these projects that have fantastic potential, and then they don't turn out to have potential. I can't explain what that is, but the guy's probably going to keep on going indefinitely. Just who knows? It just is the luck of the draw. I don't know what to say about that, but he seems to be able to just nab these jobs, and they keep going, but projects that you have high hopes for, and then they're like, well, no, we're falling flat again. I don't know.
I think it's interesting because I think he always directs them very well, and they're shot very well. I mean, I watched Dial of Destiny. That's a piece of crap movie, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. They're shot well.
It could be
First
the
10
case.
minutes are very good.
Yeah.
Everything else sucked.
He's very good at working with what he's been given, but sometimes a director does have to the writer's got this idea, but then you put it in the hands of the director, and the director has to make these calls sometimes. Like, this works great on a page, but it's not going to work so great visually, and a director has to make these calls sometimes to make the story their own. I think this is a guy who cannot innovate from a script. I think he has the script, and the script is his Bible, and that's just kind of what he's going to do, and he's going to make the best he can out of it, but never going beyond that. He doesn't step outside the box.
So he doesn't have enough Peter O'Toole in him to put his writer in check. So that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, like
his career is as confusing as this plot line of the movie to me. It's like, I don't know how it happened.
Well, he's all over the place. He's done every genre of movie there is. He everything. Now I like a lot of what he's done, but I even got to admit the dude is all over the place. So
I think the stuff that he's done that's great was actually well written, and I think that's where he's right. This film had some pretty obvious plot holes in it, and I think he did not have the imagination or the skill to bridge the gaps.
Interesting.
But you give him a Copland, and he makes a
Copland, absolutely, which is another ensemble piece. It's like he gets these ensemble pieces dropped in his lap, and Copland is sure one that hits it out of the ballpark.
The same thing. Kate and Leopold, for those of you like rom-coms, is an ensemble piece. But I like it, but it did have plot holes as well. So I got to admit that.
Time travel.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And you have some really great leads like Hugh Jackman and I think it was Meg Ryan.
Yeah. Now let's get through this one pretty fast because we need to save some time for what went wrong. But let's go. I'm going to start with Lance. Things that were, they weren't great. They weren't good. They weren't bad, but they worked for you. They worked for the movie. So.
Well, I think the overall concept keeps you going. It's and it's a relatively short movie at maybe barely 90 minutes.
It's 90 minutes with credits.
Yeah. So I think that was the right choice to keep it short and sweet. But like y'all covered already, it could have been an hour-long Twilight Zone episode. It could have literally have been 60 minutes and probably accomplished a little bit more. But as it is, I think they made the right choice, making it short and sweet. And I thought that's satisfactory because if it went on 5 minutes longer, 10 minutes, it would have been intolerable.
And in fact, we were behind the scenes talking, and we came to the conclusion that if they cut off the ending and ended it with just the Amanda Keat character surviving, we would have been okay with it. So
yeah. I think that would have eliminated some complications. But then I get the idea of that twist. Did it jive? That's one thing that really annoyed me when Alfred Molina opened the cage to see if he was okay. You know what I mean? Right then and there, you start. But the tail end, they started to get a hair cliche-ish, and that's like, God, you could have avoided all of that. But they started going down that road just at the tail end of it. But at the very end of it, I was like, nah, they shouldn't have done that. That's lame, you know. So those little things were easily correctable. But who knows? You know, we're still going back 21 years ago. They could have still been executives by committee dictating what needed to be done. You know, what's confusing. You know, how do you edit it? We'll never know the full story because it's not that relevant to. I mean, we're making it relevant because we're talking about it. You know, making people revisit it, which is not a bad idea. But still, those things were to me. It was like, that shouldn't have. That they could have gone a better direction.
Absolutely. For me, things that were that worked in the movie, but they weren't good or bad to me. I would have to say that, as far as horror movies go, it worked. It was serviceable, but I didn't think that the makeup effects for the kills were particularly good. I don't think they were particularly bad. I thought they were just serviceable. Does it take away from my enjoyment of the movie? Absolutely not. Was it better than your standard slasher film from the early 1980s? Absolutely. So, I don't know. It's hard for me because a lot of the stuff in the movie, when I'm thinking about it, is either hit or miss for me. So I have a kind of a hard time finding something that's meh in the middle. So with that wishy-washy answer, I'm going to go over to Steve. So.
A couple of things. Most of them were either like noticeably good or noticeably bad for me. I will say like the bits with the couple and their little argument and all that. That's where I kind of tuned out, but it was fine. I mean, it set up them being killed, and I guess that's okay. And then kind of like the whole setup of Ray Liotta being seemingly the villain, which you kind of saw that a mile away because it's Ray Liotta and this are the kinds of characters he plays, and it's just like, okay. It was fine, and Ray Liotta is Ray Liotta. He does the Ray Liotta thing well. I mean, I can't say that, but it's like, could they have done better with the last, major beat of the movie? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff, things that were meh.
Well, let's see. Like I said, my major disjunction was when I realized that the two elements of the story weren't coming together, and they were not coming together satisfactorily for me. Because we have what appears to be something very much set in the real world. Okay, if we've got a killer with supernatural powers as the alternate story, the story inside the head keeps alluding to, then what's going on in the present time is not making any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I started to become dissatisfied with things, because I knew I wasn't going to like how this resolved. It's kind of like when I saw the film, Jordan Peele's film, Us. The first 2 acts of the film I really enjoyed quite a bit. There was a lot of suspense, a lot of drama. It was shot well, it was directed well. There was a couple of things that were slightly annoying, but for the most part, I liked the film. But I realized if they were going to resolve what was happening in the film, I wasn't going to like it because it wasn't going to make any sense. It wasn't going to work out, and that's exactly what we do here. As we discussed backstage, you can't murder a split personality. They're still in your head. You can kind of therapy them away. I see what they're doing. I see what they're trying to do, and they were trying to be very clever. And while I was watching the film, I wanted it to succeed. I really did, because I did enjoy that alternate reality aspect of the story very much. But I knew ultimately I was going to be dissatisfied, and especially after all of that work. And I'm not against an unhappy ending in a film. You watch a film like Hereditary. I was like, whew, that was a banger of an ending there. And that was a very unhappy ending. But here, that last bit was not earned at all. I felt like the characters, if you get to the point where they're going to say, like, okay, we're not going to execute this guy because there's a part of him that's innocent, even though the other part of I'm saying they're going like, it doesn't matter, man. He's a mad dog. And the most merciful thing you can do is to take him out of society for his benefit and for ours. And then to go and you do the ending that becomes famous with Saul, years later, is like, oh, let's have the flashback and show how like this little kid overpowers everybody and he's got magical powers. Of course he's got magical powers. He's in a mindscape, so everything he does makes sense in a nonsensical sort of way. And I absolutely hated that. At least when you saw Saw and you saw how things were being planned out by Jigsaw, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, that's cool, I get that. But when I see the little kid doing it, and I think that what they thought was the cleverness of it is because we don't really pay attention to the kid. The kid is just a victim in the movie. And you go back and it's like, oh, he's doing it. But then the way they showed that he was doing things was like, even in this mind, don't buy it.
He's overpowering everybody and doing slasher kills on them for the most part. So
he is Michael Myers. Everybody else is a character to some degree or another.
He's Michael Myers.
He's Michael Myers.
He's Jason Voorhees.
The problem is the Mind Palace world is set up in such that each character, each split personality is reacting as if this is reality. Ray Liotta has the pierced shirt. We see people suffer the effects of damage and things going on in the course of the events. But then this little shit comes out and he overpowers a guy who could just, I see a kid with a butcher knife. Like, he's coming at me with that thing. I'm just going to kick him right in the face.
Exactly.
No consistent rules is a problem.
Well, right. I'm going to kick him in the face.
I think Rebecca De Mornay could have took him.
Yeah. I mean, and we've really lapsed into things that are wrong with this movie. But one of the biggest things was Jake Busey's death. The guy had a baseball bat shoved all the way down his throat.
And
a kid is totally going to ram a baseball bat down his throat at that angle.
That's so funny because it reminds me of like they're getting to this whole supernatural element, so you're trying to buy into it. When that was so glaring, it's like not even Arnold Schwarzenegger or The Rock could shove a baseball bat down your throat, big end first.
Yeah, average adult male could not do that. So
even the above average, like old John Matusak from the day, like that guy couldn't shove a baseball bat down your throat. And my uncle knew about that guy in school. He said he picked up the back end of a guy's car and turned it sideways in a parking spot so he couldn't get out. That's a strong dude, but he's not doing that.
It's an utterly unbelievable. So I mean, let's get into things that went wrong in earnest. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and start off with, and I'm going to call somebody out here, and I'm going to call the writer out. He's a bad writer. His name is Michael Cooney. He has never written anything good. He is most famous for Jack Frost.
I looked him up.
Oh God,
yeah, I mean he's bad. He's certainly no Agatha Christie, and here he is tasked with turning a great Agatha Christie novel, which was a good, 2 movies, one in Britain, one in the United States, and put a twist on that with time travel and a bunch of other stuff. He's just not up to the task.
Yeah, I'm looking up his filmography on Wikipedia, and these are all not good films.
Not only that, and the part where I'm glad that he steered away from it, but the very fact that Michael Cooney introduced this at all made me hate the writing in this film. And I like this movie, but it made me hate the writing is when they started to hint that what was going on here was the haunted tombs and something.
Oh yeah, that was a blatant deflection. I saw that too. That's a blatant.
They were trying to shining this up, and it didn't work.
Shining all the way.
And I was cringing when every time I watch the movie, I cringe. I'm like, oh dear God, please don't go there because I'm going to turn the movie off. And then the fact that there are things happening which make no sense, like Jake Busey having a whole bat shoved down his throat. That I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna go there. They're gonna go to haunted tombs, But it's just not good. And you know what? This is what we do here on Cinema Crusaders. I like this film, but I gotta call out what I see, and the writer is bad. He's a bad writer. He's never written anything good in his life. How he got this project with this cast, to do, for his screenplay. I don't know. Maybe he had naked pictures of somebody. Because he didn't do anything before this movie to deserve getting this movie, and he hasn't done anything since. This is the biggest and most successful movie he's ever worked on. So
at least he went out on
People
top.
have all the luck.
yeah. Look, Kellis Corpses says, I'm having a hard time not making a your mama joke about the bat. Yeah, exactly. So Jason Voorhees might have been able to do the bat. Yeah, Jason could have done it. I don't think Michael Myers could have. So yeah, so
maybe even Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, maybe. Over to Shade Wing. What went wrong for you in this movie?
Oh God!
Let it go. Let it go.
Yeah, the writing is no bueno. That's really a lot of it. It's not the cast. It's not even the direction. Really, it's the writing. It's not served. And a lot of it is this movie is a jumbled mess of a lot of different things that don't mix. You've got the psychodrama with the dissociative identity disorder, which on its own could be a good movie. You have the horror movie with all these people kind of stranded in the motel, which could be a good movie. You have the Agatha Christie setup, which could by itself be a good movie. But the way they mix it just does not work. And on top of that, a lot of it is that this dreamscape has no rules. So what you have is a murder mystery where you're trying to figure out who, among the suspects could have done it. But it's like it's completely not fair because the killer is the Shape. He's Michael Myers, and there's no way that you can reasonably guess any of this. And then you have these people dying and it's not explained. You have the whole psychological aspect which is not explained. I mean, you don't know where this guy's trauma came from. It would have been really interesting to see how Malcolm Rivers could have fragmented and how you could be a monster, and you could, if you do the work of the movie, you can find some things that could have led to that. Totally could have. Like, he's definitely killing his parents like a couple of times in this movie, so he's definitely got issues. And you can see like all these other characters are damaged in different ways. And you could see, okay, I could see them adding up into this deranged killer, but I should not be the one doing the work. You are the writer. You should be doing enough work so that, I don't have to go digging into this stuff myself to the extent that I've had to. Yeah. No.
Until you could figure it out, and then it just
and then it's not satisfying. Yeah. And then it's not satisfying because it's not emotionally satisfying. Well, I mean, like I said, the ending is tacked on. You would have had a reasonably emotionally satisfying thing if it was just Amanda Peet riding into the sunset. And it's not even, that it's a happy ending. It's that it's not earned because the villain is this kid who comes out of nowhere. And, it's like, okay, maybe, you can establish that the kid is the villain, but it's like, it doesn't feel earned. I think Jeff absolutely nailed that. It's not earned. And it's a jumbled mess that doesn't add up to anything. It is weaker than the sum of its parts.
One of the greatest things about Twilight Zone is that they didn't feel the need to always wrap everything up. They left things open sometimes. Jeff alluded to this. I think this movie...
But they did it with better writing than this.
Yeah, yes. This movie would have been much better if it would have left and talked about dissociative, DID, which is a constant struggle to try and bring identities together. If Amanda Peet drives off and the last scene we have is of the dead bodies starting to heal themselves and reanimate, meaning the personalities are coming back,
and you can do this kind of stuff well. You can do this kind of stuff well. I think the Hulk has dealt with DID very well. The Moon Knight has dealt with these kinds of things, reasonably well in the comics, and even in the TV show, it wasn't, it was better than this. So it's just wasted. A lot of it's wasted.
Yeah, and that's got to go down to writing, because I think the idea is interesting, but it would be a challenge to do. It would definitely be a challenge. Jeff, things that went wrong. Put it on blast.
I mean, that really kind of goes in there with my mess stuff. Like especially once you reveal the child Timmy is the killer, it really any saving grace it had falls apart right there. Even at the end, he walks up to Amanda Peet, and I'm just like, Paris, you've got a tool in your hand. Why don't you just whack him first? You know, he's out there with his little garden tool. You've got a garden tool. He's half your size and a quarter of your weight. What's the problem? You start off on your knees. No, you still got him. Yeah, like, but
you could have stayed there.
Yeah,
or
but he does.
Or they could have gone full anime where Timmy, who is obviously supposed to be the little boy, the wounded Malcolm Rivers inside, is transforms into the big killer Malcolm Rivers when he actually kills people. So
see, now that would have made a lot more sense than showing the flashbacks and watching the kid do it. Like once we realized what the deal is, it would have been greater. It would have been so much cooler to watch like Timmy walks and something breaks your eye line, like a light stand or something, a door frame, and then boom, he's full size Malcolm. Now I buy that he's actually killing the other people in the mindscape.
Not only that, it allows you to use that very talented actor some more. So.
Yes.
and a lot of it is we don't know who the core personality is. Is it the kid? Is it is it Ed? Is it somebody else? We don't know.
Yeah,
it's not explained.
It's such a shame too because we got to see this played out much better. Yeah.
Again, doing the work of the movie.
We got to see this played out much better in the Shyamalan films, Split and Glass. Where McAvoy did such an amazing job with those personalities.
I agree with Mike here, by the way. I do think the kid is the core personality. So
it probably is meant to be, but again, we're doing the work of the movie to conclude that.
Right.
Well, he's definitely the core personality. He's where the fracture starts.
Exactly.
So this is a wounded kid. This is why whores don't get second chances. His mom was a whore.
Right.
It was an abusive life because of that, and that's where all the rage and the anger comes in. So, like, he's the core personality.
He's killing his mom.
It's so interesting, though, that it's usually not the core personality when you see these cases, at least in film, that are the core personality oftentimes is not the dominant one, but he ends up being the dominant one. So, by that logic, it is right that he takes his place at the head of the table at the end. But the way they handled it was bad. It was bad, and I just couldn't get behind the ending,
But that's what's so frustrating is that this guy, this writer, Cooney, has a bunch of really good ideas, and he's done his research for the most part, and yet he can't put it all together, for whatever reason. Lance, over to you. What went wrong?
Well, I'm going to have to go more retroactive on the production of the film of what went wrong. It's like, okay, so obviously it was greenlit. It was like, okay, this movie is going into production. To me is where it all went wrong because I don't feel it was ready. I think
the very act of making the movie is where it went wrong. So.
Yeah, the script needed another 100 rewrites.
It needed rewrites. It needed a lot more competency to get to a place where maybe it would make some dollars. Maybe it would have longevity. I see the cast as being the cash grab for the movie, and that's it. That's the draw in, and you can't hang your hat on that. We know you can't hang your hat on that. But that's to me what really annoys me. It's like, still people worked hard. They were getting sick on the set with the rain. They were up all night making this movie. And what does it amount to in the end? Is it going to be something that you're going to just say, hey, this was so awesome, I can't get it out of my mind? No, it's actually the reverse. It's like, there are some elements that you can go, yeah, okay. When you look at it, there's some great things. But other than that, no. So you go back to agents, producers, executives saying, we're green lighting this movie. It's going to happen. We're going to have rain scenes throughout it. We're going to drench cast and crew. We're going to go through all of this and hope that people are going to get it when really we don't get it. We're like Shade says, man, we're doing the work. We're doing all the work. So it's a bummer. Yeah. So that's what grieves me the most in situations like this. Green lighting it, having it go, get made, and then have us to try and point out, geez, it could have been so much better, but to what cost? To what cost?
It's like it's that garbage in, garbage out thing. It doesn't matter how good everything else is if it's flawed in the concept. So
yeah, so that's what really grieves me the most.
I can see that. So let's go closing thoughts here. I mean, for me, I'm going to say this was my movie. I suggested it. It's a movie that I enjoy watching for what it brings, but it's flawed. You know, it's one of these movies that I can watch. It's my Showgirls, you know, so
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
you know, uh, but I can't disagree with any of the problems. In fact, I pointed out some of them myself. So yeah, it's hard to say. So I mean, I think it's worth watching for a variety of reasons. If you've never seen the movie out there, give it a shot. Watch it. Like you said, it's beautiful. I think there's some interesting concepts here. If I was writing this movie, God, it would be hard. It would be really difficult to tie it all together. You know, I don't want to sell myself short, but I think it would be really hard for me to make a 90-minute movie and make it all make sense, you know? So that's my final thought on it. Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, I have to agree on that point. It would have to be a longer film to work out the kinks. Unless you were going to you're going to be really, really tight and concise about it. And this kind of goes into what Lance harps on all the time is meticulous planning. Again, I just feel like this guy had a script. He knows how to make a movie. He knows how to make a movie look good. He knows how to get performances out of his actors. He understands everything about the movie making process, except when it comes to the script, knowing what to cut, what to keep, and what to play with.
And he doesn't. I was going to say he doesn't know how to say no, but I can't say that. It's not like he's done every movie ever imagined. It seems like he's picking and choosing. It's just I don't know what he's doing with it. So,
I mean, I have nothing but admiration for people who dabble in multiple genres. You know, some people are very just being in one genre, and this guy takes his shot at multiple genres. And you know, when he succeeds wildly. But again, after our analysis of this, I have to wonder how much of that is just he gets a really good script, and he can make pretty scenes to go with a pretty script.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's one of the most interesting things I've taken away from our conversation today is that I've come to the conclusion that James Mangold is a technician, but he doesn't have vision. So
that's a good way of putting it.
That just nailed it right there.
Yeah.
Lance, what about you? Final thoughts on this movie?
It's one of those things where there's phrases that ring in my head, like, "Wow, you shouldn't direct something you wrote. You're too close to it." Yeah, bullshit. That makes it more. It doesn't make it personal. It makes you more technically proficient because you think about the words and the shots. Oh, you shouldn't edit what you shot or directed. You're too close to it. Yeah, bullshit. I'll cut stuff out if it doesn't propel the story forward. I will be as brutal as possible to myself because I want the best story in the end. And when I see movies like this that really feel made by committee or that are very confused, it's like, I don't have any regrets watching this movie, but it's just the whole process, the Hollywood process that annoys the shit out of me. I can see too many hands in the pot here. I can see a lot of confusion and a lot of people trying to make this thing work. And that's just too much. That kind of kills the art. It becomes more of a, how do you make the commercial more pleasing so people watch it? I don't like that. So, that's kind of what annoys me, especially with a big Hollywood production like this.
Cool. Very cool. Finally, Steve, final thoughts on Identity.
Yeah, I have ripped this movie quite a bit, but I mean, it's not as bad as I make it sound. It really is not. I mean, there's a lot going on that is enjoyable. I think a lot of it is the cast, and I think a lot of it is Mangold. Where it doesn't work is things to do with the script and the meta narrative that they're going for, which is unfortunate because I really love it conceptually. Like, I really like this idea of getting in the mind of a killer, have him basically fight things out within himself. It's literally a battle for his soul. And that's interesting. I think you can do a lot with that. I think you can do a lot with the Agatha Christie idea. I think you can do a lot with these other ideas. It's just that, you can't put everything in a blender and have it come up roses,
Right.
And that's unfortunately what happened here. And I don't regret having seen this. I think there's a lot to like, and I do, enjoy my time with this movie. It's just, I acknowledge that there are some pretty serious flaws in it, and it just doesn't land what it tries to land. But it's one of those things I call an interesting failure, and that is what it is in the end. It's an interesting failure, and it's one of those that you're kind of looking at this as a train wreck, and the fascination is seeing like where it goes off the rails, and once in a while it's good to revisit a movie like that.
Heck yeah.
And for all of you who want to go on a tangent, this is not the first time people have tried to get in the mind of a killer. Another interesting movie to watch is The Cell from the 90s, starring Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Lopez, of all people. Not a bad movie, but it has its flaws as well.
No, not Vince Vaughn, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah.
I thought Vince Vaughn was in it too. He's one of the FBI agents. So.
Oh, he is. I'm sorry. I was thinking the mind of the killer, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah. So it's a good movie, but it's got its flaws as well, and for some of the same reasons that this movie was flawed. So check it out. Go and look at it because it does give you a lot to think about. So I want to thank these gentlemen. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lance.
You bet. And I think I can make the announcement.
All right.
Ooh.
Cool.
Okay, originally, you got a Cusack, you got a lot of people in this movie. Alfred Molina. John Hawkes made a movie called Too Late, which doesn't meet our time frame of 10 years, and I'm okay with that. We'll wait a year. I was going to go with Ray Liotta again and do Youth in Revolt. He plays another cop in there. I mean, it's a great film, but I'm going to say no. Since I'm sticking with Rebecca De Mornay, I'm going Rebecca De Mornay, Runaway Train, 1985.
Oh,
nice. All right. I will be making sure that we get all that, and we will be watching that. And you heard it here first, folks. Next week, we'll be doing Runaway Train, starring Rebecca De Mornay. We're going to follow her. So very interesting. Looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Steve.
Well, I can't possibly follow up on that, except to say that I look forward to our discussion of that next week. And it's been good to talk about this film.
Yeah, it was fun to talk about this.
And if you like our discussions here, please click like and subscribe on this. We love doing this, getting together. We hope that you're enjoying it out there as well, and watch all the stuff we have on the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel. On behalf of myself and my fellow Cinema Crusaders, make sure that you keep that popcorn warm. Find yourself a comfy chair, snuggle up in it, and watch some cinema this weekend. Until next week, we're the Cinema Crusaders. We're out of here. Bye, everybody.
See you.